Art has no inherent value to anyone except the person who created it. Let's not misinterpret what I'm saying. The creative process and the product thereof has potential to be the single most important thing we do as a species. But where is the line of what's valuable and what isn't? We value art based on personal interpretation, economic/societal value, reputation of the artist, and the price tag that the artist or seller places on the piece, which is, by far, the least important and most arbitrary indicator of value ever established when it comes to art. And while it might sound like I'm stating redundancies by including both economic value and the price tag, I assure you I am not. A vast majority of the time, real artists undervalue their work to an absurd degree, deciding that it's worth less than the skill required to create the expression. It's one side of a coin with two tragic halves. The other side harbors actors who claim creative expression and fabricate pieces of art that can only be described as a miserable insult to the creative process. And to further insert the blade of conscious deceit, not only do they overvalue their product, they value it at all. But art is subjective, and the value is determined by the audience. Yes, true. Even still, you're an idiot because you're choosing to construct the illusion of meaning in something that requires you to do so. Without art, we are nothing. There is nothing except for the why of what we think and make that is worth trying to understand. There is a certain maniacal evil surrounding the monetization of being able to put an emotion into visual craft. We can look at something crafted from the hands of someone who is blissful or angry or feeling real love and assign a value that we deem appropriate, and we use money of all things to do it. Real art deserves to be rewarded. That I can never disagree with. But I think those who act in place of real artists, creating meaningless pieces of work because people who can't see through the disguise pay them to do it, are committing a wildly malicious sin. There is trust in real art. Trust that the person who made it harnessed whatever they were feeling to create and express rather than to deceive and destroy. That they thought about starting over and all they could see were the flaws. That they were worried about being judged for the construction of their own mirror. It's courage. I despise people who try to emulate without leaving a speck of emotional blood on the page. Even though I could continue this emotional tangent for longer than I'd care to admit, that's not the actual point. Personal interpretation and value. The first of 4 metrics for valuing art. The most intimate, so perhaps by association the most meaningful. A doodle on a sticky note from a recently deceased man holds a lot more value to his loved ones than it would to the rest of the world. It's not made with thought-altering skill, or valuable materials, or even a moderate amount of emotional vulnerability. Even still, it's not likely that his loved ones would trade it for a large sum of money. Interpretation allows art to vary highly in its value because it can't possibly mean the same thing to everyone. That's the reason I find price tags arbitrary, which I'll get into later. It's the most honest method for enjoying something someone else has created, because instead of manipulating what it's worth so that it becomes utterly linear, the actual value of the piece fluctuates from person to person like a graph. It's not possible to create something that appeals to everyone, and I think that's really cool. In fact, I think that the further one strays from trying to appeal to other people, the better their art becomes. Creating for the sake of creating. The gold standard for art, in my opinion. Economic and societal value. The dollar value of a piece can fluctuate drastically even if the artist is dead or never set a price tag. This is completely separate from the price tag category because, at the time it was made, the artist was creating for the sake of creating. The artist lived up to a standard, and by hand of coincidence, or more likely accidental appeal, the piece established for itself a certain degree of worth when it comes to dollars and cents. Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night was not created as a commission or even as a piece to be sold. It's been said that it was purely therapeutic because of his struggle with mental health, and he himself considered the piece a failure. Truth be told, I have a hard time believing that. It's completely iconic, and beyond that, it's a really beautiful piece. It's emotional, and it's raw, and it's highly respected. It's a painting of his view from his room in the asylum he admitted himself to after his infamous act of self-mutilation, in which he cut off the lower half of his left ear with a razor blade. It's hard to know why he did what he did, but that doesn't stop people from developing educated theories. However, there are two theories that are favored above the rest. The first says that he did it after a heated argument with another artist that he was working and living with, Paul Gauguin. The other says he wrapped his ear in cloth and presented it to a brothel maid he was infatuated with. Some people believe both are true. Given that I'm not a seasoned art historian, I can only speculate on his exact motive. All is to say, he made it without any regard for what it was worth, and then the world decided. Perhaps because of what it was, or perhaps because of the morbid events that led up to it. Either way, the piece is good because it's real, and it's valuable because so many people can feel it. Reputation of the artist. Sometimes a piece of art is valued highly because of who created it, with little consideration for what the piece actually is. We as humans are highly susceptible to brand image and are willing to pay a premium for it. We exhibit this on a small scale in our everyday lives when we buy foods, hygiene products, or any variety of everyday supplies. Convinced that the name brand product is better or more effective, we allow ourselves in many instances to spend more money than we need to for something we believe is better, even if it's exactly the same. Aleve, the drug of choice when it comes to overall pain relief. It can be expected to work quickly for an extended period of time, but what exactly are you paying for? In this instance, you're paying $14.97 for 80 220mg naproxen sodium liquid gels, $8.97 for the product, and $6 for the brand. Because as it turns out, you can buy naproxen sodium liquid gels in the exact same dosage and quantity for, who would have guessed, $8.97. Rhine 2 by Andreas Gursky is a photograph taken of the Rhine River, one of the main European rivers beginning in the southeastern Alps and ultimately ending in the North Sea. His picture depicts the water running horizontally through the camera's view, with green grass flatlands in the back and foreground of the shot. Truth be told, and objectively speaking, I actually like this shot. It's simple and minimal, sure, but the symmetry and colors are actually quite pleasant in my opinion. However, beyond that, there really isn't much more to say about this picture other than it could have been taken by anyone. There's not necessarily a large amount of technical compositional skill being depicted, nor a barrier to entry regarding the location where it was taken. I don't mean to discredit the photo, because like I said, I actually like it, but I have a hard time believing it would have sold for $4.3 million if someone without Gursky's reputation took it. He was already an established photographer in 2011 when the piece sold. Many critics stated that he was and still is one of the best and most significant contemporary artists of our time, or perhaps of all time. I am personally a fan of his work, but in regards to this specific piece, we're separating the art from the artist, and the truth of such a matter is that the piece itself could have been taken by any number of other people, and it would have been more than unlikely to have sold for the $4.3 million that it was auctioned for. The price tag set by the artist or seller, as said previously, arbitrary, and I can tell you why. We've already spoken about how the value of a piece is, in every significant way, completely out of the artist's control. One cannot predict or control how people will react to what they make. They cannot anticipate the value the world will place on it at the time of creation, nor decades after the artist's death. The only way a seller-set price tag can coexist with another one of the methods I've touched on already is if the artist has a pre-existing reputation, of which they would be using as an economical bargaining chip. You can begin to see how the opportunity to receive meaning in art naturally becomes close to impossible. before someone has the chance to decide what value a piece is to them based on their own thoughts and feelings, you decide for them using a metric everyone can understand: money. It's tragic, really. I mean, where's the risk? How can it be possible to chance being rejected while deciding for yourself and everybody else exactly what it's worth? I suppose if no one buys it, you might find answers. But then does that mean it didn't mean anything to anyone? Certainly that can't be the case, but it's impossible to know if you value what you make on your own terms, with money no less. I hope I'm beginning to make you understand why I find this system arbitrary. And to summarize, the value of art is determined by how it's received. So if you're going to create from that within you which is afraid of being misunderstood, that which is happy or hurting, but far, far above all else, that which is honest,